Welcome to Fact Vault. Today, we're exploring one of the most intriguing texts in history, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. But don't let the name fool you. This is no ordinary book, it's a roadmap to the afterlife, guiding souls through judgment, divine encounters, and mystical realms. So, if you've ever wondered what ancient Egyptians believed happened after death, stick around as we uncover the secrets of this extraordinary text. What exactly is the Book of the Dead? The Book of the Dead is essentially a compilation of spells, charms, and rituals that the ancient Egyptians believed would help them navigate the perilous journey of the afterlife. Rather than being a book in our modern sense, it was a customized manuscript, often written on papyrus scrolls, designed for the deceased it accompanied. Wealthy Egyptians would commission these scrolls, filled with personal spells to protect against supernatural threats and to guarantee safe passage into the eternal paradise known as the Field of Reeds. Unlike the standardized holy texts we see today, each Book of the Dead was unique. It was filled with specific spells and prayers selected for the deceased person's needs or, sometimes, even their fears. This text was essential to the burial process and became popular during Egypt's New Kingdom, though some of its components date back as early as 2600 BCE. The origins and evolution of the Book of the Dead. To understand why the Book of the Dead was so significant, we need to look back at its roots. Originally, similar afterlife texts were inscribed directly onto tomb walls, known as the pyramid texts, reserved for pharaohs and nobles. By the time of the Middle Kingdom, around 2000 BCE, these texts evolved into coffin texts, which were painted on coffins and made available to the common people. It wasn't until the New Kingdom, around 1550 BCE, that these concepts were compiled into portable papyrus scrolls. This evolution reflects a major shift in Egyptian belief, the idea that anyone, not just royalty, could access an afterlife if they were properly prepared. So, over time, the Book of the Dead became more elaborate, incorporating spells for the common man as well as the elite, and with that came hundreds of different incantations suited for each individual's needs. The journey through the underworld. Imagine waking up in a mysterious realm filled with dangerous creatures, deep rivers, and towering walls of fire. This is the Egyptian underworld, known as Duat, a chaotic, otherworldly place where only the prepared could survive. The Book of the Dead served as a survival guide to this treacherous journey, complete with spells for every challenge. For instance, one spell, often called the spell for not dying a second time, was meant to protect the soul from a second, final death in the afterlife. Another spell allowed the deceased to transform into animals, like a falcon or a serpent, to fly over obstacles. It was believed that, with the right magic words, a person could even pass through solid walls or avoid drowning in Duat's cursed waters. Each of these spells had a purpose: to shield the soul from harm and ensure they reached Osiris, the god of the underworld, who would ultimately decide their fate. This concept of a journey and the protection spells are remarkably similar to the ideas found in other ancient cultures, where the afterlife was seen as a series of trials rather than an immediate paradise. The weighing of the heart ceremony, judgment in the afterlife. Once the deceased reached Osiris, their journey was far from over. Now, it was time for judgment. This is where one of the most iconic scenes of ancient Egyptian belief comes into play, the weighing of the heart ceremony. Egyptians believed that the heart was the seat of one's soul and conscience, recording every good deed and sin committed during a person's life. In the Hall of Two Truths, the heart of the deceased was placed on one side of a scale, while a feather, representing Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice, was placed on the other. If the heart was as light as the feather, it signified a life lived with integrity, and the soul was granted access to the Field of Reeds. But if the heart was heavy with wrongdoing, the consequences were dire. The soul would be devoured by Ammit, a terrifying creature part lion, crocodile, and hippo. This terrifying scene has fascinated historians and archaeologists for years, as it shows how deeply the Egyptians valued moral conduct. In a way, it resembles the concept of judgment in many modern religions, though it's wrapped in the imagery and symbolism unique to ancient Egypt. The Field of Reeds, a vision of paradise. So, what happened if the deceased passed the test? The reward was eternal life in the Field of Reeds, Egypt's vision of paradise. This afterlife was seen as a mirror of life on earth, with rivers, crops, and homes. It was an idealized version of Egypt, free of the hardships and pain of mortal life. In the Field of Reeds, the deceased would reunite with loved ones, enjoy endless food and drink, and live in peace. They believed that the souls in the Field of Reeds could continue their lives, working in their fields or relaxing by the riverbanks. And here's an interesting detail: the Egyptians were so meticulous in planning their afterlife that they were often buried with tiny servant figurines, called shapti, who would do the hard work for them in the afterlife. The power of spells, amulets, and sacred words to successfully reach the field of reeds, however, one needed more than just spells. Ancient Egyptians were buried with an array of amulets, charms, and statues, each holding a specific protective power. Among the most famous is the Scarab of the Heart, an amulet placed over the heart to help the deceased plead their case during judgment. Some spells could grant the deceased power over gods or creatures they'd encounter in Duat. For instance, the spell for not letting the heart create opposition against its owner was designed to prevent the heart from speaking out against the soul during judgment. The ancient Egyptians believed the heart held a life of its own, which could betray the deceased if they weren't careful. The power of these amulets and spells was so respected that many Egyptians even wore similar protective charms during their lifetimes. This shows how the afterlife was not only a distant concept but an integral part of daily life. The legacy of the Book of the Dead. Though thousands of years have passed, the Book of the Dead continues to fascinate scholars and laypeople alike. Its intricate spells and surreal journey into the afterlife have inspired countless works of art, literature, and even modern films. Today, people from around the world visit museums to marvel at these ancient papyrus scrolls, decorated with vivid illustrations of Egyptian gods and strange symbols. Interestingly, the Book of the Dead also gives us insight into the Egyptian perspective on life and death. It wasn't simply a matter of reaching paradise, it was about living a life worthy of it. This focus on morality, self-discipline, and divine justice resonates across cultures and ages. Thanks for joining us on this journey through ancient Egypt's Book of the Dead. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mysteries of the afterlife, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more explorations of the past. At Fact Vault, we're always uncovering ancient secrets and forgotten knowledge, so stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.